even talked about this before, but got to understand I'm an explorer of things I don't fully understand in my yoga practice. So, and it's amazing there. I hope that you figure out in your own yoga practice when you have lines that you know have really important content to them, and you kind of know, well, I'm only going to get this much now, and then I'm going to get this much in a couple years, and then, you know, and these lines keep giving. And I hope you've at least honed some of your sensibilities as to when that kind of insight or truth comes across your midst or across your path. And if you can do that, that's the great thing about being a yogi, right? Is that if you can kind of know when something's actually happened or something actually like sparks something, you don't have to understand it. You just have to not forget it, right? Or that something actually happened, or an insight happened and an energy you can't quite repeat, but you know, kind of happened. And what's great, one of the things I remember one time reading from BKS Iyengar was that some, like, I think I've said this before, it's from the little section on grace in the Tree of Yoga, something about that the only real difference, or some students are only going to be technically proficient, right? Like, and that's okay. That's a good path as a yogi, to be technically proficient, right? And but then others are more visited by grace. And I think everyone's actually visited by grace, right? Which is a class title we had before. And and really all your technical part of your yoga practice is so when you're visited by moments of insight, you can hold on to them longer. You can pursue them longer, that they don't fade. And this is going to become really important over the years of your yoga practice. I've been practicing since 1991, is that the insights don't get as big and dramatic, but I know how to be with them longer and over time. So I don't know what your moments are, but I hope you're at least recognizing that they happened, right? That like, wait, okay. And maybe you never get back to them, but at least you don't deny when you could hear that little tickle and you know you're not quite ready for them, for whatever it was, but it's going to stay with you. And your yoga practice is to be able to return to them. So here's one of mine that's going to be defining this class. And I've talked about it recently before. I'm just having a new wave of it again, a couple months. And so one time I was with Richard and Mary Freeman, who are Ashtanga yoga teachers and not even Iyengar yoga teachers, right? And we're talking about, the crap we talk about, like, who knows? But like, they said to Richard, I was teaching at a studio, and if you know Richard Freeman, it's like pretty big honor to teach at a studio, right? And I was teaching at a studio, and he showed me this picture of this amazing drawing as of a Hanuman, which I don't even really know. It's just one of the gods in the Hindu pantheon or whatever, right? And he said, really good drawings of this, they would make monks. He said this kind of out of nowhere, right? And he said, really good drawings like this, and even better, would be how monks would be taught alignment. They'd meditate on it. They'd stare at it hours and hours. And he just kind of went on like it was no big deal. And then there's another line you probably heard, maybe you've heard this story from me before, that I'll maybe share at the end of the class. But I sit there and I remember thinking that little radar goes off. Like, okay, what the hell does that even mean? How the hell would that even work? Right? And so, and the idea, it's the kind of like insight, kind of like a Zen koan, where your rational mind's not going to be able to enter. It's just not. And so there's a lot of things I could tell you with words over the years. That was probably uttered to me 15 years ago, 10 years ago, for sure 15, probably more like 15. And I'm still wondering about it, right? And I'm thinking, so the monk's sitting there and probably in lotus or something, I don't know, which would actually be lotus pose or simple crossed legs, or right, is actually a really important base around the spine. Okay, so varying your base around your spine is going to be one of the integral ways to access deep yogic realization. It's not all about movement. So they're sitting there, and let's imagine for a second that what Richard reported to me is actually true. Be like forgiving of this. He said he read this in an ancient text, right? Let's imagine that it actually worked. Or if you don't think it actually worked, and these monks didn't realize alignment this way, let's imagine it could work, right? If so, how? So I've been mulling this over for about 15 years, and the monk is sitting there with a really good base around his or her spine. And they're looking across empty space. And they're looking at a drawing that's really aligned. And they stare at it for hours, maybe so long that they can close their eyes and still see it. And it teaches them alignment. What the hell, Chuck? Right? What's going on there? Instead of all the things we do with muscular action and all the ways we're trying to do alignment in Iyengar yoga, there's a whole other way of teaching alignment. And it comes more from maybe the limb of meditation, maybe, I don't know, without so much action and control involved. I don't know, right? I remember one of the first takeaways I got out of that encounter was there's a lot of ways to learn, right? That whatever I think is the way you learn alignment in a pose, with action and control and refinement, maybe there's more. And Richard didn't qualify what kind of alignment he meant, but I know it was in the context of us talking about physical alignment. So he's not just talking about ethereal, spiritual soul alignment, right? Which is part of what happens when your body gets aligned, by the way. Right? But so sit up straight and tall. So that story about a possibility, an unknown field for you and me, that I can learn on a whole bunch of different ways and levels, starts a yoga practice. You think you're doing one thing in a yoga practice, you're doing that thing for sure, but it's not all you're doing. So think about some of the instructions you hear week in and week out, right? Sit up straight and tall. In other words, make your spine be slightly more alert. So I've gone through a week. I got really pretty sick with a bladder infection starting last Sunday. And I've been in a lot of physical pain this week. And I know as a pain strategy, what I've done, and I know that a lot of us do this, I've hollowed the empty space, right? I've turned it into a sinkhole, which is typically what fatigue does. It turns the empty space into a sinkhole. right? So you can kind of bury the pain in it, right? It kind of can get kind of lost in there, but there's a price for becoming a scarecrow, right? Like in relationship to pain, but it's necessary sometimes, right? So I'm in the process as I'm finally getting better on the right drug of trying to take the hollowing space, empty space, and turn it back towards the light. And I don't mean metaphorically, like I mean literal. Back to connection, not to sinking, right? So as I sit up straight and tall, and I don't just bring alertness and sternness to my spine, but I make sure I'm thinking about the sensation of balance. So have you noticed how much I've been saying for months, like balance your head over your neck? Feel the space between your shoulders and your ears. Open to the space behind you. All the while you're staying grounded on your sitting bones and your feet, right? Take time to put your feet directly below your knees. If you're sitting in a chair, like get the base. Remember, these yogis looking at that drawing are getting a good base around their spine because their spine realizes the alignment, not their outer body, and not just their mind, right? So I'm trying to use balance. And as soon as I start to balance and feel the negative space or the empty space around me, right, something starts to happen. So of course, usually we start with more attention to the exhale and then the spark of inhale. But I'm thinking about that space between the monk and the drawing as being realized inside the monk, in direct communication with the drawing. So the drawing's just a metaphor, right? What if your spine was in direct communication with the space around it? So I've been saying weird things like, how do you touch a tree from 20 feet? For months, I've been talking like that. Now, if I want to mess it up, I'm going to take my head out of alignment. I go back to balancing the head over my neck. I've also been talking to you about what's the first step into action. I'm telling you that prana rewards structure, feet on the floor, sitting bones. Use the sensation of balance, which is itself an integration with the space around you. Feel your structure, but allow that there's no distance between you and the drawing. Now, the first step more directly towards asana, I've been telling you, is an important step. At least I think it is, because once I break Humpty Dumpty, I have a hard time putting him back together. Right? So I'm going to put more exertion, but graceful exertion through my sitting bones. I'm going to receive through the empty space the corresponding lift in my chest. Once I see it, I'm going to lift my chest. Once I see it, feel it, intuit it, don't get lost in language. Now I'm going to extend from my inner groin to my inner knee, down through my inner heel. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to take advantage of sitting in a chair as opposed to in simple cross legs. If I was in simple cross legs, my spine would be connected to the ground. But now I've got another expression down to the floor. So I'm extending from my inner groin to the inner knee down to the inner heel to help me lift my chest. My sitting bones are going down to help me lift my chest. And these actions of asana need to be balanced. So as I'm trying to do this, there's a decent chance you put the tongue against the roof of your mouth and tighten your mouth because your mind's getting really active. So as you're in this structure from body to mind, soften the skin on your face, the temples, the inside of the mouth. Allow that there's air inside your head, even while you're exerting. You are water and air and earth, and you have intent, but your intent is an ember glowing in the center of your chest. If you want to add awareness of the midline, bring your hands into prayer. Not if you go off balance. And if you go on, I would only do it if my elbows are on the table because otherwise I would collapse the space in my spine. I don't know about you. So now I have to repose everything, all that I earned, with an extra level of the midline. I get to do it again. I get to be innocent and do it again. Let go of your day. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. Take your sternum up towards your chin down over your sternum. Keep asking yourself, why do a whole bunch of really advanced yogis think this position matters so much? What am I missing? What have I only partially realized? Can I stay patient? Can I receive? Whatever the insight is there for you today. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So whether you're being able to bring your hands into prayer or not, I'm doing it on the table, but I'm always amazed. Remember, we're trying to now pay attention to how empty spaces might show you alignment, right? It might refine your pose, not just how well you do something. Now, this is going to be crucial in an adaptive yoga class because I want alignment and not the violent relationship we typically have towards our bodies when you live with disability. Have the alignment come from the empty spaces, not from frustration towards the body, right? And it takes a different brain to do that, right? So what I love about, so whether you bring your hands on your thighs or into prayer, whatever the analog is, I'm going to talk about it in terms of my hands in prayer. But when I actually come to the midline, and feel stuff, there are little actions I can do that I've already been taught that actually, if I'm really paying attention, they actually enhance my congruence, right? If I listen and am congruent with the unity between me and the space around me, there's a natural movement towards aligned action. So I'm amazed, like little actions. So with my hands together like this, however you're doing it, right? But it could be on your legs, it could be whatever, right? If I actually feel the heels of my hands and I'm trying to stay open in the center of my chest to the space around me, right? So like Michael, something like this is really important for you to try to keep exploring, right? Is that how does the center of my chest, not how my muscles fire, how does the center of my chest stay connected to the space around me? Now, don't forget about the monks sitting at a distance from the painting, from the drawing, right? And so what I can't believe is that when I ground and do all the things I know in asana, and even connect and lengthen the skin on my fingers and open the center of my palms and gracefully increase the pressure between my hands as a symptom, that actually enhances my sense of congruence. That they're actions that if I really learn how to put in service of unity, there are actions that deepen my sense and bring me into alignment. But dang, this is hard. Except, is it? Does it kind of actually, instead of it being hard, you think about doing it right? Isn't it kind of like opening a window and letting fresh air in? Let it be fresh air. Follow it. Follow the gentle breeze of congruence. Good, and then release. Well, wait, this is way too focused. Yeah, it's kind of focused, right? So we'll lighten it up, right? So move around a little bit. Do that rocking and rolling some of you hopefully have got attached to, right? Because damn, that you just put me into a real small room. Damn it. With all that focus, I got into a small room. It's like, oh, my mind started to waver, right? Right? My mind started to rebel. Did anyone, when I was doing that thing, did you notice itches on your face? And when's he gonna stop talking? And holy cow, right? Like, damn it. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Because I'm ready to do. I'm not fully ready to receive, but if empty spaces can align your pose, it must be you have to receive it first, right? You have to receive it and then follow it. And if you think that's in your head, you're going to go straight to hell. It's not in your head. Your brain actually has to go into shavasana. So I'm going to lift up because I like the feeling of length in my spine, right? So if you can't lift up around, just shift your weight, right? And I like when it moves with rhythm. So I get all this distraction, so my mind doesn't feel like it's getting forced into a small room that it doesn't know how to be in, right? Oh, but wait, all this movement, bring it into focus. So stop moving. Take all that lightness and movement and put it right through the midline. How are you going to do that? Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. You're going to have to open the landscape. You're going to have to get really good at sensation and integrating it. I actually am glad that I've been studying alignment through movement, and not by meditating 12 hours a day looking at a freaking drawing on the wall. I'm pretty happy about that, to be honest with you. Right? So now I'm taking my legs wide, just living in more spaces, right? Making sure I remember that I don't just have to be confined. I'm pulling my knees apart, right? So things like this, I'm starting the coordination of stuff, so knees apart, chest lifted, right? And then I fall back into the scarecrow posture that I did for a week to avoid pain. I'm going to come in, so I'm coordinating, push this way with a lift this way, and a change in gravity forward. Seems so simple. There ain't nothing simple about it, right? Do it again. Out, up, forward, out, up. So when I go out with my knees, up with my chest, forward with a change of gravity. That's like coming into standing poses. Out, up, forward. Lean to one side. Launching my spine. Remember, if you know anything about the Bandhas, that yoga was probably realized from sitting still. You know that the spine is the instrument of enlightenment for a yogi. Right? The spine is what is the magical part. The center, the core channel of the life force. Okay, so now I've got this sense of lightness, right? So now I'm going to bring it into focus and do dog pose. So I'm going to do it on my desk by my computer, right? But you can do it here. Because now look, I've taken that space I just opened up with all the sensation, and I'm going to bring it and focus it into lengthening my spine. So I want your spine, in order for it fully to receive, right? I say things like there's no such thing as a one-way street in yoga. In order to fully realize the flow of prana, you have to move in at least two directions. So my hands are on the table. I'm hitting down through my sitting bones. And I'm not just lifting my chest. I'm lifting my chest to lengthen out the top of my head. But I'm pulling, right, my sitting bones in the opposite direction. So and I've told this story to you before, one of the first time I ever met my yoga teacher, again, one of those moments where you hear and then you know it matters and you kind of think it's stupid, but you know it matters, so you return to it the rest of your life. And she says to me, so you're doing dog pose right now, don't just listen to me, do dog pose. She says to me, Matt, there's bad stretching, there's good stretching, and then there's yoga. And then she compared it to a rubber band. She said, if you have a rubber band, you can't just pull it in one direction. You have to anchor it. You have to have one finger, right, to anchor the rubber band and pull it in the other one. Otherwise, it never stretches, right? So your sitting bones down is the anchor, is the one finger on the rubber band. The lift through the spine, hitting down to the sitting bones, out through the top of the head. Can anyone notice that it makes you want to work the underside of your arms? Not if you can see what I'm saying there. Holy frick frack, right? Are you kidding me? Here comes dog pose, because my spine is moving in multiple directions. And as soon as I get the arms, my God, I could kind of feel prana more aware down the inseam of my legs. What the hell, Chuck? Now, if I want everything to collapse to the ground like a sack of potatoes, I'm going to drop my chest. Go back to the scarecrow. Right? Damn it. Fill the scarecrow, make the empty spaces full, bring them into alignment. What do I need to do in order to make the empty spaces, not my physical instructions to you, the empty spaces show me the pose? Good, and then release. The empty spaces show the prana, not the physical instructions, right? It's freaking mind-blowing. Right, so I'm moving around again because my noodle is a little bit baked right now. Even when I'm teaching you something or sharing you something that I've been doing for a long time, my noodle's baking right now, right? Because I can't believe it, right? Like, I can't believe that the empty spaces show me how to act, right? Sit up straight and tall. How to come into congruence. So now I'm going to go up. So again, this idea of good stretching, bad stretching, right? As soon as my arm goes up, I'm focusing down. I don't even care if you take your arm up. You could do it without taking your arm up. Your arm is just an expression. Good, and then release. Take the other arm up. And go back down. But I'm not just going up, I'm going down. Right? Because I know. Okay, so I start to pay attention to what has, so when I keep my arm bent like this, okay, so try to pay attention. And I don't care if you don't do it over your head. You could be on a table, you could do a whole bunch of things, right? In fact, we'll do it both ways. Okay, so if I keep my arm bent here, ask yourself, right, and then release, how much can you sense the space right around your arm? Right, and then back down. Right, so I'm just going without, I'm just kind of like pretending that yoga is just about the outer body movement, which it totally isn't, right? Okay, so now I'm going to go up and go down and roll my tricep towards the ear. And now I wonder what happens in the space around you when you add the refinement, when you open the side ribs here, when you go up and down, right? What's the quality change of so instead of here, where I'm a scarecrow in my spine, I go down, I go up, I figure out that it continues if I rotate my arm a little bit, right? That I'm actually, and then down, I'm actually, asana is a continuation of prana. So here's one thing, here's another, I'm trying to find my spine. Cool. All of a sudden, although I'm efforting, I'm more connected to the space around me, right? Here, I'm a scarecrow. Here, my spine's not engaged. It's just my arm, my rotator cuff. Here, I start to feel connected, and the opportunity for balance is different, and then back down. So over your head is hard for some of you. So bring your hands on a table. Whoops. Let me unplug that. So what would I do if my hand's on the table in front of me, or on my knee in front of me, right? You don't have a table, right? Right? Or that table for me. What would I do if I wanted to clarify my relationship to the space around me with asana? Right. So if I keep my arm bent, there's nothing wrong with this. Can you feel the heaviness, scarecrow, deadened thing? This is my pain behavior. I was in all last week, right? Right. So now I'm going to actually start thinking, okay, what can I do to clarify the relationship around my arm and make it be more connected to the empty space? Well, don't just listen to all the instruction you've gotten from me. Start to try to feel, okay, I want to try to bring the arm in, lengthen it, push through the hand, draw back this way, right? And then notice there's a crisper relationship. Now bend it again. The relationship changes to the space around it. When I start to go, okay, I'm going to straighten, I'm going to hit, I'm going to ground the back edge of my shoulder blade. Does anyone kind of want to lift your chest? Can you feel that? Holy chuck. Like, what the hell? What do you mean? You mean paying attention to the clarity around my body makes me expand alignment in other parts of my body? Yes. Is this one of the fundamental insights of yoga? Yes. Other arm, because I know I better do it on both sides, right? And you're going to find one side's going to be better than the other, for God's sakes. If you pay attention how asymmetrical you are, you're going to go straight to hell, right? It's amazing how effed up your body is, just so you know, because you've been not doing it well, right? You've been living on one side more than the other, probably your dominant hand, right? So here's the bent one. And I can kind of feel like strength here. I have to, right? But I want better connection. So I'm going to straighten. I'm going to go in two directions. Whoops, my spine starts to lift. Whoops, I want to go down through my sitting bones. Whoops, I want to connect from the inner groin to the inner knee down to the inner heel. Oh, I'll break it again. Here we go. How does the clarity of my connection to what's around me show me alignment? So the monks are sitting there looking at that drawing, and they're touching it with their spine. They're letting the alignment in the spine, right, touch the drawing. So now both hands, right? So now what I want you to do is I want you to author your own instructions in dog pose by listening. Sure, I can tell you some crap, and I know some tricks you don't know, for sure. Right? So I'm gonna, so find your own pose for a second. Let the clarity and the connection to space around you guide your actions. And then maybe once you get a little bit more aligned, maybe it's a really good time to pay attention to your breath. So your breath feeds an aligned version of yourself, of your body, that you're plugged more into the light socket of the universe through alignment. Holy cow. Good. Release. So, oh dear, I better move around a little bit because I'm about to say something deep again. You better move again, right? More's come in. It's going to be a category switch, an element switch. Oh no. Oh dear. Right? In fact, we'll just throw a twist in there because I saw a couple of you twist, like go and inhale it. Oh, I better prepare the soil, like, because my head's gonna make it look collapsed here in a second, and then go the other way because you got to prepare the soil for God's sakes. Trying to learn this through asana, not through all this freaking description. All right. So I read in Yoga Rahasya, which is a thing from the Iyengar Institute. They asked him, so Bikas Iyengar, like this, you could ever answer this question. He goes, so Bikas Iyengar, how did you develop your concept of alignment? The hell, right? Nice question. Okay. And he says something really that again, one of those tickles that I return to, and we're just showing it right now. We're living it right now. He said, well, think of alignment as your body's a vessel, like a glass jar. And imagine there's water on the inside of the jar, right? But it doesn't, by the amount of water in there, it doesn't touch all the inside of the jar at once for your mind, right? So you come into greater alignment in order to make sure that the water touches all the inside edges of the jar. What? Let's go back to dog pose for a second. Hands on your legs, hands on the table. You start moving your hands and your arms in two directions, pressing down this way, lengthening this way. What? You want to lift your chest, right? Can you feel that? You probably already did it. You feel like, oh my God, I kind of want to ground my sitting bones because it makes sense. Then I want to make sure I'm going down to my feet. And then maybe because I'm feeling kind of goofy, I want to wiggle my toes because I don't want to forget the very outer edges. That's water hitting the sides of the jar. Good, and then release. The alignment makes the emptiness from a scarecrow into it being full. It's water. It's not inorganic mental awareness. Try it again. Start to find a way you're throwing movement and moving water, and it's fluid, right? It's not solid. It's not air. It's water. You're finding connections to your body. Use the alignment to spread to the inner edges of the jar. And then release. Except once you start to get that, then you realize that the water doesn't stop at the inner edges, that the spine is actually in constant interplay with the space around it. All right, for God's sakes, let's move now, right? More. So now I've got all these things like, oh my God. So now I'm going to forget all the instructions, all this weird talk, and I'm going to sit up straight and tall again. I'm going to come back to Tadasana, come back to being a sturdy mountain, right? Big, grounded, full. But wait, now I'm going to make sure instead of the mountain just being arid, I want to make sure the mountain's also water. What does that even mean? Well, hopefully you got more of a clue. I can tell you right now that my shoulder here, my right shoulder tends to roll out. If I pay attention to becoming a grounded mountain that's water, I roll that shoulder under because I can tell I'm leaking energy out this side of my spine if I don't roll this shoulder underneath. And once I do, so my body's got this shoulder tending to go out. That's why this rotator cuff is in so much trouble, right? When I do, the current gains. And then when I do that, I notice that I need to lengthen here. And then I let this start to adjust my pose. And then when I get this length right and open, I feel my sitting bones more. I feel my feet more. But that's my body. What's yours? Try again. Come into Tadasana, letting your sense of lightness and fullness and relief and water and it hitting the jar, let it guide. Find the places where your river is stuck, but do it from empty spaces into action. Oh, good gravy. There's more here. All right, now I'm trying to have a little bit more fun. I'm going to take up more space. I'm going to open. I'm not just going to stretch dumb like a rubber band, like throw my arm back. I'm going to go up. I'm going to ground the other hip, right? Because I want to keep the water full. I'm going to do all these actions and open. And then I'm going to release. And now I'm going to let that precision guide a more fun action. Right? Then I'll do the other side. I'm going to watch it all open once and then go. I know if my mind tries to, I'm going to do it one more time grounded. Right? If I'm pushing down on the opposite leg here, right? And opening. Right? And then back. Now I'm going to try to keep that imprint and have it when I go faster. Right? Keep that imprint, have it when I go faster. Can I do it? Can I accelerate movement? You know, your mind wants to make everything fast. Hence, we're destroying the planet too fast, right? Right? Your mind wants to make it fast. Your mind wants your cell phone to be faster in response. Your mind wants your internet speed faster. Are you sure it's a good idea? I don't think so. Right? So I'm going back and forth, and my spine is moving my arms. My sitting bones are moving my arms. What's harder for me is I can do it with my spine, but it's harder to include my legs. So on this next one, I'm going to go down, open my spine, and go down through my heels. Now, when I do it that way, my head is out of its clench. Didn't even know it. Some of you that have trouble having your head in the pose, I just caught myself not having my head in my pose. Right? All the way down to my feet. Remember, I'm watching. I'm not just pushing the water to the edges of the glass. My actions aren't the things that's pushing the water on. I'm letting the momentum of movement splash the water. This is what is so smart about Vinyasa Yoga, is that the movement itself splashes the water. Move however you feel like you should right now. Splashes the water to the sides of the jar, right? The problem is if you're disabled, your movements are limited. So you and I have to figure out how to make certain movements splash water in all directions to the sides of the jar, right? So I'm going up, I'm doing all these things, right? I'm going to pause now, integrate, bring it back through the midline. I'm going to now make a few movements that make me feel more alive, whatever they are for you. I hope these movements you're doing now integrate the sensations of grounding, rhythm, balance, and expansion, right? But whatever they are, I want an integrated concoction of sensation to be part of the movements that make you be alive, because we're trying to use movement not for its own sake, but to splash water to the edges of the jar. Whatever they are, arms up, arms down, spine in different relationship to gravity, back over the back of your chair, right? You're spreading water to the edges of the jar. The water moves without your direct will, and then come back into center. Learn to gather movement back through the midline. Once you do, maybe you can transform the balance of your neck over your torso and your head over your neck. Maybe you can find the relationship on your sitting bones that helps your sitting bones touch the floor. Remember, the yogis made a really good base, likely in lotus, for the spine. Soften, so you're using alignment now to stay connected to the space around you. Because one of the reasons why Shavasana is nourishing is because the empty spaces are nourishing. Right? So find the position where you're going to be able to keep the benefit of alignment without having to strain to hold it together. Because in Shavasana, the strain is counterproductive. It actually chokes off the river. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. What if you actually learn to soften the inside of your mouth? Connect the very deep inner ear to the base of the tongue, to the release of skin on the inside of your mouth. What if you could do this and keep your spine alert without strain? Let go in the shape you're in. There's a point in Shavasana where you need to stop moving and accept whatever it is. Quit trying to fix it. Take whatever gains are there. There's a home here. It's everywhere. Let it in. Be a vessel. Feel your breath. Thank your body. The hum never leaves you. Start to increase your breath, slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. As you introduce more movement, the hum, the silent om, is still there. It will align you if you receive it. When you're ready, open your eyes. If it's too much light, close them again. Sometimes it's too much light. So then I open them again. And I start to turn my scarecrow that got me through the last week back towards what's warmer. So the line that also sits with me from Richard, as he told me that story, was the natural consequence of alignment is compassion. I like that. That actually, if you align with the universe, it requires less violence, more connection, and the natural consequence of that is compassion. So that's how they taught the yogis compassion, as they sat in front of the drawing. Because if you're being truthful, human beings actually don't like doing harm to each other, to the earth. It scars us. Anybody feeling any of the scars I'm feeling the scars. Mhm. So I'm going to practice in my own case, in my own hula hoop.